can share with everyone. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen really quickly just to be sure everyone is finding the information correctly. So when you get into the Curator platform, the way you will log in to the webinar is you go under the module or the webinar for the day. You go under the webinar 2, and then you have to click here where it says click here to view the object in the new window. And then you will click here to join webinar, and then it will send you to the Zoom link. Also, Mirinda is going to copy the Zoom link on the chat just in case. If you have the iCals downloaded to your calendar, that should also facilitate the process, but you have to do that extra click. So just make sure everybody is able to find it and access the information. To go back, you just X out on the top right, you go to levels. And I will check right now. I believe the webinar from yesterday is already, you have to click here to view, and the webinar is already on here from yesterday. So if you missed something, you were a little late, you can go back and watch it again. All right. Any questions about the platform? We don't want this to be a hindrance to accessing the course. All right, let me check the chat. I see some messages. Okay, no worries, Chloe. Okay, great. So now that we got the technical pieces out of the way, let's get started with today's session, which is about you as a manager. Okay, so what is your role as a manager? So don't forget to update your virtual name tags if you can, your name, your organization, city and country you're joining us from. If you're able to, connection is not an issue, please turn on your cameras, and then we will get things rolling. All right, so today's session, we are going to talk about how to identify the core competencies of a good manager, to understand the difference between management and leadership, to examine situational leadership, to identify the challenges of remote management, and understand inclusive management, and to establish how to avoid expressing bias, right? So we ended up our last session by talking about the things that a manager does and the roles that they play, right? I'm going to show you a list of things. Oh, there we go. So these are the main core competencies for being a good manager. They have to have conflict resolution skills. They have to be able to influence upwards. They have to be self-aware, emotional intelligence. They have to be good problem solvers. They have to be able to plan, motivate, radiate trust and integrity. So these are most of the things that were on our list from yesterday, right? So when you think of competency areas on this list, do you think of them as most applicable to managers or to leaders? Because there is a difference between the two, okay? And then as we're looking through this list, think about maybe how do some of these apply to both, right? I think both of them need to motivate others, right? As a manager, you're in a place of authority, but you still need to be able to motivate. As a leader, you motivate. You could be a leader and not in a place of authority, right? This is what we call our shining stars on the team, where they take initiative, they get others to come on board, they know how to work well with others. So it doesn't mean that you have authority when you're a leader. Okay. Communication, I guess, is a skill that they need from both as a leader and as a manager, right? And trust and integrity is a skill that needs to be under both as a manager, as a leader. Maybe not delegation so much, right? But more so how to be inclusive, how to listen to others. Does anybody have any other thoughts? I heard a mic open. I don't want to exclude anyone. So now let's look at a list of management versus leadership, right? Let's take a look at this list and identify some differences between management and leadership. And as you look at these characteristics, think about to what extent does your job land more on the left of the column or more on the right hand of the column, okay? So management, it's focusing on systems, relies on control. You're looking at the bottom line, efficiency is being effective, right? All about the organizational component and goals of the organization. And it's based on authority. While leadership is about being creative and innovator, you focus more on the people, you inspire trust, you ask why, you have this vision of where you want to be or how things should be, right? And it's based on power and influence. And it's a lot of interpersonal process. So nowadays, managers, we need to develop the skills to move between both of these. So leadership is about having a vision to guide change by thinking ahead, motivating others, and making challenges an opportunity for change. Managers focus on achieving an organizational goals through procedures, budgets, staffing changes, and looking at that bottom line. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because I want us to look at page 10 of your workbook, and we're going to work on a SWOT analysis, right? So we're going to do a little bit of self-reflection. So we're going to look at the competencies, descriptions in your workbook, and then complete the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat chart for yourself. And use it to plan. Again, we're only going to have like about 5 minutes. So this is just for you to start getting started and getting used to having those moments of self-reflection of what do you need? What are you good at? Where might you need support? What are some challenges to get the job done, right? Or just for yourself. So we're going to take about 5 minutes. You can turn off your cameras. This is using page 10 of your workbook, okay? And using some of those competencies. So I'm going to put some nice music again to set the mood. And I'm really into bossa nova right now, especially when working. But I'm going to put my timer and we're going to put 5 minutes. And then just use that page 10 of your SWOT analysis. And if you're more comfortable, you can turn off your cameras as well. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to pause the recording and we're going to get things started. That was that time. Perfect. So how was it? How was this exercise for you? We don't have to share what you put on your SWOT analysis, but how did it feel for you? Do you do this enough? You don't do it enough. Who just wants to share with us?
Just jumping in. This is Kirsten speaking. I thought it was too short because as I found myself reading through the different options, I couldn't take enough time to actually think about how each one applied to me. And I kept thinking throughout the process actually of the Johari method, because we recently had feedback in my organization and some of these characteristics that I normally wouldn't attribute to myself came up from my colleagues as being things that I do very well. So that was just something else that kept coming to the forefront of my thinking during the exercise.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Kristen. Anybody else want to share what they thought about the exercise or how to make them feel? Do you use something like this?
Yeah, I can share how I felt.
Perfect. Thank you, Rajin.
Hi, this is Rajin. So I actually didn't have time trouble going through it because I think there was a pre-read about the competency model, which I went through, so I knew what were the characteristics of the competencies. I was able to identify my strengths. I was also able to identify some of my weaknesses. I have just hired someone under me, like it's been a couple of days. And this training has been planned so that I can explore myself as a manager. So while I was looking at the question, like, how can you practice using your strength to be a better manager? I was wondering actually, how do I do that? maybe some pointers would help because I'm
Yeah.
kind of lost here.
That is a great question, Regine. Anything else you want to add before I jump in there?
No, I was just wondering, I mean, any suggestion would really be helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Regine. Any colleagues want to jump in and kind of answer that question or give some examples of how they practice using their strengths to be a better manager? If we remove the word practicing using your strength, practicing to be a better manager, and just say, how do you utilize your strengths? That's the same question. For example, if budgeting is your strength, right? Then you would use that to maybe build someone's capacity. Identify someone in your team that is interested in learning budgeting and finance management and start having and training them, building up their skill set, right? If you're a good writer and you get published, or you're writing articles for the work to disseminate the work or report, and one of your colleagues or someone in your team is more interested in the technical aspects of the work, you might consider coaching them or helping you co-write the report or some type of article. Okay, so it's just using what you're good at and putting it into like a teaching moment or a coaching moment for someone else, or even for your manager. Sometimes our own managers, have some areas of improvement where maybe finance or having challenging conversations is not their strength, but yours is. So you can use that to have better conversations with staff about performance or using what you're good at to impact others. That's really kind of what they're trying to mean by that. Does that help, Regine?
Yeah, it does a little bit, but speaking from my thought process throughout the day to day, like I'm on a different time zone. So I finished work like 3 hours ago. So now I'm attending this training. And throughout this day, I kept thinking like, okay, I want to teach her or support her in learning the skills that I have so that she can be a contributing team member, and I can lean on her and look towards something that interests me, like sort of delegate to her some of the work. But I don't know what the right moment is. Like, is it too soon to go to her and like, hey, come over here and I can show you these things? She might feel like, oh, it's been 2 days and he's already trying to delegate work. So I just want her to feel comfortable. So I had a chat with her, like, take it easy, like go through your HR orientation. It's okay. Later on, we'll see. But when we were coming out of the meeting room, it felt like she felt disappointed, like I'm not trying to teach her. So I'm like in a dilemma right now. So yeah.
Okay. And I can tell you I've been there, because you want to be conscious and considerate towards, her joining your new, being a new team member, but you also want her to feel like there's a plan and you've thought about, what her path is going to be to an extent, right? But you also need to figure out her skill set. So my recommendation, and others, please feel to chime in when you've had something similar, is first, make sure that she knows and she has the resources to do the job that she was hired to do. So do that training, do that onboarding, and then as you see where her skill sets are and mastering or feeling more comfortable to do those tasks that she was hired to do, then you can start introducing other tasks or expanding her role. But first, focus on what she needs to have, what resources and what knowledge and information to carry out the job she was hired to do. And it's okay to share with them the plan. Look, I want to help you get started and situated and feel comfortable with the job that you were brought on to do. And then I would like to explore possibilities of showing you how to do finance, or how to do some research, or whatever the other areas that you want to work on, and share the plan so she knows that there is the plan after you have the base to start with, which is for her to know what the job is that she was brought on to do. Okay. But it's not too early to have those conversations so that she can feel that you've put some thought to this. So I hope that's
Yep,
helpful.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for bringing that to the room. I think that's important because a lot of us go through that, and some of us don't even have time to think about what to do with our staff when they come in. We're just thinking, oh my God, now I got to train them, and my pile of things to do are like so long and I don't have time. So thank you for bringing that. And that is a reality we all face. So thank you. Kirsten?
Yeah, I just have a very recent similar experience that maybe might help.
Yeah, please.
My team received got a new colleague on board, and I became her line manager. And as part of her onboarding, she had the HR onboarding, but she also had her role profile development, which we did jointly, so that she knew exactly the kind of tasks that she would be doing. And then she had, at least in our organization, in the first year, we have 4 different feedback rounds: 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then, well, a 5th one, which would be the 1 year. And in the 1 month, we talked about how things were going, and she was able to voice things like, not concerns, but areas where she felt that she was being underutilized, or where the team didn't understand maybe what she could be doing to support them. And so we were able to tweak everything as we got to the 6-month point, and having those opportunities to sit back and reflect together what's going well, what's not going well, where do you see adaptations that need to be made in your tasks, really helped to make her feel that she was fitting into her role, that she was supported in her development, and that we had a clear plan or trajectory set up on how we could, like an action plan, setting up an action plan on how she could improve herself and her skills over the process.
That is great, Kristen. Thank you for sharing that. And that is very important. We should, not all organizations do, but we should get used to setting goals for new staff joining so that they know what expectations are, right? And they can own it and be part of the process of their own growth and development. So it's also not all on you as their supervisor to find things for them to do or see how they fit in or how they can continue to contribute. So I love that this person was able to also have the space to say, I also can do this. I can contribute by doing this. So that's very important to have those discussions, maybe not on day 2, but within the first week or 2, it's good to sit down and say, okay, now that you've, understand the organization, a little bit more of your role, these are some goals. Let's work together on setting some goals for the next 3 months, 6 months, right? And see where we're at. And that's a good tool to use to see how also the person is learning. And there is a learning curve. No matter how seasoned you are, you still need to figure out the organization, the process. You may not need technical support, but you need to figure out how things are done within the organization. And that takes sometimes about 3 months, if not longer, depending on the type of organization and sector that you're in. So having those conversations and setting goals, I think it's very helpful, and allowing them that space to give you feedback. Hey, am I not being shy or scared of getting feedback? Is there anything else I could do for you? Do you have all the resources that you need? And have that dialogue. Also feel comfortable saying, you know what, I really think that, we need to work on this. You haven't perfected this, or I see that you still need some support in this area. How can we work together to make this happen? Okay. I think this is very helpful. Chloe asked, is the slide management versus leadership available to download somewhere? You're going to get a copy of all the slides at the end of the presentation, but you could definitely take screenshots and we can share that with you as well. So I can put it up in a moment. And then Chloe had a hard time identifying opportunities. That's really important. And I like that you said that, Chloe, because sometimes as managers, we think that there's no more professional development for us. And that's not true. No matter how seasoned or senior you are in your field, there's always room for professional development. And it may not be the traditional way we think of professional development by attending workshops or a course or getting a certification. It could also be by lending our talents, right? By conducting a training on a specific topic for our organization. It could be by publishing an article or writing an op-ed or just contributing to a professional organization from our field. That's also a way that we can get professional development. So identifying areas of opportunity should also focus on parts that you want to grow professionally, but also grow within the organization. So having a conversation with your manager, like, hey, now I want to learn about, I don't know, how certain projects are delivered in, I don't know, Uganda, for example. Maybe start working on some small projects or attending those meetings to understand how that project is being developed or carried out. So if you have an area of interest, having those conversations with your manager as well to see where you can start cross-pollinating to other projects or other sectors of the organization. Let's say you're in the technical side, but now you want to learn a little bit of programs or administration because you eventually want to be a manager, or you're already a manager, but you want to now manage another project or another competency. Identify that for yourself and ask, hey, I would like to do this. How can we make this happen? Okay. Sometimes it's not as very clear and simple, but that's why having these moments of reflection and stepping back are very important so that we do have that clear space. Okay, let's see any other comments. Okay. Anybody had any other thoughts on this SWOT analysis? It's a great tool, by the way, to have your teams do the same. It's a nice little like check-in, and reality check for some, where you're like, oh, I think I'm amazing at everything, but you're really not, right? There's still things to learn, there's still things to contribute, you still need some support and guidance. Or you're amazing at this particular skill and you could really be an asset to the team or the organization. So it's a really good tool, not only for ourselves, but also for our teams as well. Okay. So 5 minutes is not enough. It doesn't do this exercise justice, but this is all about to help you get used to carving out the time to think about you, where you're at, what are your strengths, where do you need support, what are some skills you want to learn, what are some skills, what are some obstacles, right? And like I said, this is a great tool to start conversations with your manager and with your teams. So feel free to use it and use it as a way to also get feedback. Yes, Tiwange.
I think I identified like one or two opportunities for me that, because of having a good managers in the past, I'm emulating the same those strengths. But my challenge is only delegation. That's, I think, is my weakness. It's because of I identified that there is I can do more development within my team, and I already started that the agreed the objective, that the annual plan, the what we would do to reach to meet those objectives. That, and I also identified that I need probably 80% of my input for them to achieve those objectives. But then the challenge is there's, on the work side, I see that there's a task which I need to delegate, and then my team doesn't know that how to do that task, and it's a little bit tricky as well. So I said, okay, it might take me an hour or two to do it myself, or it will take me the whole day to start explaining. Then there's more work to do. So
Yes.
how do I balance that?
And that's a great question, because that's what everybody struggles with delegation, right? You're like, okay, I don't have like 4 hours to give to train someone and then check their work and then try to figure out when I could just focus if I have 2 hours. So what you need to think about delegation, which is really building their capacity, right? It's an investment. Yes, initially it hurts, right? Because you're going to invest a lot of time, but once you build their skill set, that's going to alleviate you having to do that in the future. So it's an initial investment on a longer freeing up your time, and it allows you to build their skill set as well. So there's no way about it. You have to just get on the mindset of, I'm doing this because it's going to be helpful for me down the line. And it's going to be helpful for them, right? Because we're building their skill set and allowing them to stretch professionally. So changing our mindset and realizing that delegating and training and capacity building of our staff is part of the work. It shouldn't be an added, right? That should be part of our daily schedule and is just as important as getting our to-do list done. And once we start switching that mindset, it would help us not have so much anxiety about training someone to do work, because it is part of the work to train them and have them be a contributing member of the team. Does that help a little? I know there's no magic solution, but it is all about our mindset, right? We do have to make even this little SWOT analysis, carving out the time to see where we're at. I can't stress that enough. It's part of our job. It's not an add-on. It's not an afterthought. It's not an after 5 o'clock work schedule. It's part of our planning day. Do it at the beginning of the day, do it at the end of the day, do it at the end of the week, at the beginning of the week. Find the time, but it's very important, because if we're continuing to just operate an autopilot, we're going to lose a lot of things, and then we're going to start getting burnt out. So we need to have a plan, right? And we need to know what we need in order to execute our plan. So planning is important and is part of our work, regardless of what we've been trained before. It is part of our work. Okay.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for bringing that up. This is what it's about: sharing, asking questions, because we're here to let you know we're all in the same boat. We've been there, and it's a continuous struggle or mindset shift. So there's not one cure. So this SWOT analysis also helps you to start thinking of where you are as we talk about situational leadership, right? And how to set good remote working habits and systems, and how to address and prevent bias. So it's all linked to where we are. So that's why that self-reflection is linked to our also emotional intelligence, right? And then also being able to plan and delegate. So I'm going to share real quick for some of you that asked the slide on management and leadership. So if you want to take a quick little snapshot or screenshot, Zoom allows you to save as well. Where is the Zoom? I think under annotate, you could just go to view more options, annotate, and then save. You can save the screen if that's what you would like to do. Okay. Awesome. So the next thing we're going to talk about is situational leadership, and we're going to talk about a model, okay, that at the core of this model, it's what people want to feel seen. So what is the best way to manage people, right? People just want to be seen. So many of the qualities that you raised about a good manager get at the core of this, that a good manager uses a variety of skill sets and qualities to understand each other, to understand each individual that reports to them, and to make them feel heard and seen. So how do you manage the person? It depends. There's no one size fits all. There's not one approach fits all. It's all about the individual, the behavior, the task, their skills. So it's all about situational leadership. So one of the key theories around it depends is that management and leadership was developed in the 1970s by Hershey and Blanchard, called situational leadership. So at the core, again, is that managers and leaders need to adapt their leadership style to the individual and the situation. So looking at good management models, this is based on a 4-box matrix. There's a lot of different management models, but this starts with the x-axis. So the low to high directive behavior is how much direction you as a manager need to give to the individual that you're working with. And keep in mind that this is not only dependent on the person, but also the task that they're doing. So some tasks with some individuals may need a lot of direction because they're new, right? You just delegated this activity to them. They've never seen it. They don't know what they're doing. Their skill set might be kind of low, right? So you need to give them a lot of direction. While other tasks, this individual may need less direction. Okay. Then on the y-axis is the low to high supportive behavior. So how much do you need to support that individual in a socio-emotional way, right? Do they have the confidence to deliver the task? Do they have the willingness to deliver the task? Do you need to help them access to other resources to carry out the task? So just like with directive behavior, it all depends on the task and the situation and the individual. Okay. And we can easily plot a staff person's journey with their role for any given task as it goes from high direct behavior through the left direction and more support. You've done this before, you can do it again. So perhaps you just need a little extra support, right? So we're coaching. Going through the high support, low direction, all the way through the low direction, high support. So we can easily, even ourselves, move through this. How comfortable we are with a certain task. Okay. So you can clearly see that at the bottom right hand of the square, there's a high directive and low supporting behavior. So you're directing, and sometimes you're referred to as telling them what to do. That's what directing is, right? You're being very specific. I want it this way. This is exactly what you need to do. This is where you need to go. This is what this report should look like when you're done. And at the top right hand, we're doing a little bit more coaching, helping them understand the how and the why. I need you to put this report together so that we can see our progression and we can show up our management, how we're meeting our goals. We can show the donor how we're spending the money, right? So they can understand why we're doing what we're doing. On the top left box, we're lowering the amount of direction we're giving, but we're maintaining the high level with working on confidence and giving support, right? So we're supporting, we're telling them they could do it. We're having check-ins with them. We're asking them if they need support. So we're there knowing that they have us available. And the last box, we're doing very low support and very low directing. So this is when we're delegating tasks freely. We already know the staff person has the skill set, the willingness and the confidence to carry out the task. So we're just saying, hey, I need you to work on the monthly report or take a stab at the first draft of the technical report and then share with me once it's ready. So we're not giving them any more direction and this is what we need to do it. So they already understand the why, they already understand how, and you're just asking them to freely start working on the task. Okay. Let me look at the chat real quick. Sorry, I want to share my screen. Yeah, so supportive behavior. Thanks, Rebecca. So supportive behavior is basically having those check-ins with them, probably constantly, and saying, how's it going? So it's not micromanaging. Having check-ins and having follow-ups or asking for updates is not micromanagement. Telling someone what to do, you're directing them and asking for specific output, that is directing, because you're not in micromanagement, because you're not giving them specifically the freedom to do the work, right? So supporting is having those check-ins, asking them what they need, you know, showing that you're confident in them and the output. Oh, I can't wait to see the report. Let me know if you need anything. You know, let me know if you want me to take a look at the first draft before it's final. That's more how the supportive behavior happens. So how it works when you as a manager are the new of the team? Yes. Okay, so when you're new to the team, you're just going to move through this curve, right? So you may be, depending on the task, you may be technically very competent and aware, so you might not need a lot of direction on the tasks that you're doing, but you're going to need a lot of direction or coaching or supporting on how to do it the way the organization does it. Who do you need to get approvals from? What form to use, where to find it in the system, you know, understanding that process. So relying on your team or your supervisor to have you support them. So they might be directing you to an extent, right? You need to go to this Google folder to find this form, and this is what this looks like. And you're going to need to download it. And when you're done, you're going to need to give it to so-and-so for approval. So they're going to have to give you a lot of direction in the operational aspect, but you're manager might be also supporting you. Hey, let's have a check-in. Let me know if you have any questions about this task. So again, it might not be about the work, but it might be how to get the work done. Does that help, Yaz? And I can't see you all because I'm sharing my screen, so everybody's little. And then Roberto asked another example to low supportive behavior, please. So low supportive behavior that you're not giving support is you're delegating. You're just telling them what you need and you're letting them run with it. And you're telling them by when they need to do that task. But when you're supporting, you're there. You're having check-ins. You're available. You're asking them what else they need. Okay. Coaching is different because coaching, you're still showing them how to do the work. In supporting, they know how to do the work. You're just making sure they have the tools and resources available to do the work. Is that helpful? And we do this. We just now know that there's a model that, talks about delegating, directing, supporting, and coaching. But we all do this. Someone that's new, you're not going to just be like, hey, run with this report. You're going to sit down with them. You're going to tell them exactly where things are, and you're going to work through it with them, right? Until maybe the second or third report, then you'll be like, hey, you know where everything is. Let me know if you need help. Run with it. Okay, let's see. Sheila asks, how to deal with either supporting or directing a team that feels like you're older than you and feels you should not direct them or support them, but you are the manager. Okay. So yeah, so that's interesting because always someone coming into a team already in a management role already has someone feeling some kind of way sometimes, right? When you're joining a brand new team and you're coming in as leadership, you don't know what you're sometimes stepping into. Maybe someone wanted that job or the case may be. So all you have to do sometimes is just step back and listen, get to know everyone. Don't come in with guns blazing to any team, trying to say, we're going to change everything, because you have to first integrate yourself to that team and build trust. And we're going to talk about the forming stages of a team, and the basis for everything is trust. You're new, whether you're in leadership or not, you're new to the organization, you're new to the team. You can start to figure some people out and then see if it's them being standoffish or if you're dealing with certain behaviors, and then how to best address it based on the individual. But you need to get to know each other. It's not easy, it takes time, but some people's minds you're not going to be able to change if they think that you're younger than them. There's also a lot of cultural, sensitivity and issues around us. But we're going to talk about bias in a moment, where we have to assume that everyone has good intentions, and how do we check our own bias, right? And how do we start shifting a little bit of that culture? But that is a good question, Sheila. Anything else you want to expand on that, Sheila? There's not one easy answer. It's just trust, get to know everyone, and see what's the best approach for each person.
Not really. Maybe after we talk about the bias.
It's not easy being, the younger one in the group, and it's not easy being also in leadership roles. So it's a little challenging, but if you're there and show and build trust and show that you're listening and that you care about one of them is important. Because think about it, and we'll talk about change. Someone coming into a team, regardless of level, someone leaving a team, that's change. And sometimes change makes people very uncomfortable. And it's a process of loss for them as well. And we'll talk about that. They're grieving the person leaving, or they're adjusting to the change and they don't know how to deal. So they just need to be felt that they're being heard, they're being seen, so that you can understand them better, so that you don't put on your bias goggles and say, oh, and write this person off. Give them a chance. Try to understand them. They're the ones that are having the issue, but we're there to try to figure out what the issue is. Now, the fine line with anything is that once you've tried everything that you possibly could, right? And it starts becoming an insubordination situation, they're being disrespectful, it goes into the culture of the organization, it becomes a performance issue, then that's an HR conversation, right? Because there's no room for a hostile work environment or a hostile team. So there is that line. I'm not saying we're going to try to make everything rainbows and roses, but there is that fine line where things become a performance issue. We need to start having very serious conversations with staff and include human resources as well. Okay. And we need to be okay with that. Some people are just, the team changed. This may not be the setting for them anymore or the direction the team is going, and they need to be self-aware to maybe remove themselves from the situation as well. Okay, so we'll talk a bit more about that. Okay, Chris asked, oh, Marinda just shared a little bit of a link to the situational leadership, so it expands a bit more on that. Chris asked, any strategies for helping your staff move from an expectation of being directed to confidence in being coached and supported? Yes, it's part of, the goal is getting to the delegation piece, right? Is making sure that you give them the clear expectations. Like, we've done this together once or twice. Now I want you to run with it. I want to see what ideas you're going to bring with, back to me, and let's meet in 2 weeks, and give them a deadline. And you're giving them the expectations. Either you can be very direct, very specific, or you could just allow them the freedom to give you back a product that you're looking at, but you got to tell them. You can't assume that they know. And you got to sometimes just pull the band-aid and be like, hey, we've done this a couple of times. You should be able to roll with it by yourself now. Just like when someone comes new, you're going to sit down, you're going to show them how to do something in the system. You're going to show them once. The second time, you're going to be like, all right, you need to take notes. The third time is like, show me how you're going to do it. Now that I've, showed you once, we've shown you with taking notes. Now show me how you're going to do it. It's the same process. So the next one, you should be able to run it on your own and then just come to me if you have questions. But you have to build them up to that. And you have to tell them that you're building them up to that. Awesome. Any other questions about this? Okay. So we've talked a lot about situational leadership. And again, you can plot any staff member that is working on something with you, or any team member, doesn't mean that you have to supervise them, that is working on something with you. And you can literally say, all right, in this activity, so-and-so is at the coaching stage, so-and-so is at the delegating stage. So why don't we take a moment and start using this model a little bit. So using the annotate tool, think about an area you and a member of your team or your staff have been struggling with, or perhaps there's an area of friction around a task, and using the annotate tool, mark where you think they fall on this chart. And again, view options, annotate, and you can use the stamps. Or you could just put it on the chat. We don't want technology to be a thing. So view more options, annotate, stamps, and you can use a star, a check mark, an X. Yes, Matt, great observation. I think it can be easy to direct for too long or to delegate too quickly. Helpful to see the healthy progression from the bottom right to the bottom left in the chart. Yeah, remember, at the end of the day, we want everyone to be successful at their job, right? We want everyone to be able to have the tools and resources and the knowledge to carry out the tasks that they're supposed to do. We also can't baby them for too long. At some point, they need to carry out independently the job that they were hired to do. Because then if they don't, that means that their job falls on somebody else or falls on you. And no one has the time to do two people's jobs. So investing the time in coaching or delegating and training them to do something and doing it well, and then letting them carry it on is very important. And also because everyone learns differently, right? Some people learn by explaining, some people learn by doing, some people learn by failing and having to be creative and rethink about something. So that's why it's important to understand where everyone is at. Awesome. Oh, sorry about that. What did I just do? Oh, why aren't you working for me? Hold on a second. I'm sorry, guys. There you go. I apologize. Got too quick and. Okay, Rebecca, curious about how to manage options where support is offered or needed, but not received. Like, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm glad to review an early draft, but then there's no follow-up the product to share and you wish you were brought in earlier. You could focus on more proactively offering like scheduling check-ins. Yeah, so you should definitely have check-ins with your staff, not only when you're designating tasks or activities, but also just to see how things are going in the regular workload, things that you might have not designated. Listen, and when someone doesn't reach out to you and you need to give them feedback and it's not to the quality or expectations, let them know like, hey, you know, these are all the things that need to be corrected. This is why I offered, you know, to be of support and be and have check-ins with you just to make sure you were in the right track. But now we have to make all these edits. So next time, please take me up on my suggestion. And it's okay to say that, right? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And it's all about them building their skills so that they don't have to spend another few hours to now make all these changes or miss the vision, you know, from the beginning. But also make sure that when you're giving these assignments, you're delegating these tasks, that you're clear on your expectations. If you don't want too much creative freedom on the task, then be clear on what you're expecting at the end, right? What is that product as well? So that it's not too far off, what you get is not too far off than what the person, what you're expecting. But you can't, you know, you can't make people do things. You can only offer, and then they will either fail or succeed. And then they go back at it again. That's just kind of where we're at. If you don't have the time to allow them to fail or succeed, because there's a short time turnaround on a project or whatever the case may be, then you do have to be the boss, make executive decisions that on this day we're going to have a check-in and you're going to show me your draft, right? It's no longer a suggestion. Now it's like, this is what we're going to do. And this might be more part of directing. Okay. Again, depends on the situation, depends on the task, depends on the individual and the timeline that you're working with. All right. So now I just want to ask you a question just as a group. You could put it on the chat or you could open your mic. How, I mean, and we've kind of talked about this. Are there any thoughts about how else you might use this chart or situational leadership? I mean, you've asked amazing questions about examples, but is there anybody else that wants to share something, like a little aha moment that they're having about situational leadership? Okay. Again, we do this. It's just now we know that there's a model, right? And there's an actual chart and there's an actual flow. But we do this with ourselves. We do this with our teams. We just now know that there's a model.
I think it's really helpful to be able to visualize this, and even knowing that it can apply differently in particular situations, like one project may be different than another. And so I'm seeing that, okay, maybe I jumped too far ahead on this particular project into supporting and coaching, where this person needed to be given a little bit more directive on this particular thing, even though we have a relationship of very much towards more in the supportive and for other projects and tasks.
Yeah. And that's a good point, Chris, because we can sometimes just allow them to fly very quickly into the process and they may not be ready, right? So we also need to recognize when we might be rushing things for others. But if we've also felt that we've done everything we can, we've trained, we've shown them, we've, you know, reviewed their work, and then they should be able at some point to fly on their own, right? And if they don't, then we need to have those conversations as to why not. But I agree, sometimes we need to, that's what we need to get to understand each of our staff member, so we understand their strengths, their areas of improvement, their areas where they might need some support, and see what we could do for them so they can all succeed. So I appreciate that. Rebecca's asking, is there a similar model for managing upwards? You can use this also with your manager. You can use this with teams, with your staff, and with your manager, depending on the task as well. And it's a little different from the standpoint of how you can help them, but also how much support you need from them. So for example, if you're new to a task, let's say you're a new manager or a new supervisor, you might go to them for coaching or even for direction. How do I have a difficult conversation when a staff member comes late all the time? You might have them have to coach you or direct you on what to do, what steps to follow, right? Then you move into the supporting roles of, hey, I'm having this situation with a staff member, they're constantly late on the work. Can you give me some ideas of how to best handle that? And then they might then at some point just be like, hey, I'm just gonna use Chris because I see you on my little dart. Hey, Chris, now I just need you, so-and-so has been having some issues, might need some leave, and we need to adjust their schedule. Can you just have a conversation with them? So they will see also your trajectory on your comfort level in different tasks. But I'm sure, Erica, there might be other models. We'll talk a little bit about communicating and managing upwards, I think tomorrow, but it's more so you could use this pretty much from your perspective too, and your manager can use this as well with you. And also with your manager in a different way, like when you need their support and identifying when you need to ask for it. The thing with managing upwards is that sometimes your manager might not be very open and aware of what support you need. So it's up to you to be vocal and ask for the support. So that's also the little nuance with managing upwards. You're gonna probably have to ask for things versus them sometimes being having enough time or awareness to realize when you might need the support. Okay. Chloe says, my 8-people team is spread across 7 countries. Everyone requires different input, direction, support from me. And I think it could definitely be very helpful to assess where each team member falls on the curve. Yes, and it might also be but in addition to where they fall on the curve, but it's also regarding the task or situation. So I think you can start with a SWOT analysis, Chloe, to see where they self-identify areas where they need support, where they are really amazing at, and where are some obstacles. And then depending on the task, where does that task fall within their SWOT analysis? Then you can see where you might need to be more of a coach or more of a delegator, or provide more direction. But first start off understanding their strengths and areas of improvement. And then see what the task is and how it falls. That's how I would do it. Okay. So now with situational leadership, right? So the idea with situational leadership shows us how important it is to understand where each individual is in their journey for that task and to understand your team as a whole, right? And this can be even more challenging in a remote environment. It is more difficult to see people struggle. It is hard to ask for help and there's no one around you, right? Not your neighbor, not the open office door next door to call upon. So how do we do this? And again, some of us went from working with our colleagues in person to now having to work remote or have a hybrid, or some of us have always worked remote. So it's how do we adjust to making sure that we have those check-ins, that we're intentional about the connections that we're trying to have at work. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm just going to take a little poll, just put it on the chat. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like, I hate it, and 10 being, I love it, how do you feel about working remotely? Do you love it, a 10? Do you hate it, a 1? Or somewhere in between? Okay. You have a lot of love it or like really like it. And a few, not so much. And that's okay. You also need to understand that not everyone is okay or likes remote work for whatever reason. They might not have the right work environment at home. They might just really be very social and miss that interaction or the routine of going into a place, and having that workspace separate from my life space. So it's okay to know also which team members are not thriving necessarily in the remote work environment, and what can you do with that? Remote work 10, remote management 4. Yeah, Chloe, that's normally what happens, right? For us, it's like, yay, flexibility. So now I want to ask you this. What does your staff need from you now than maybe from before, where now maybe your work environment changed to go hybrid or 100% remote? So what does your staff have you noticed need from you more in your current work situation? So what does your staff need from you, or what does your team need from you more in the way you're currently working? More one-on-one meetings. Yes, check-ins have definitely should have increased 100%, right? To better improve the communication, expectations, ducking out from this one. More supervision, more deadlines, right? We need to have more structure, right? And be clear with how we're communicating our expectations. It's all about communication. More informal time to connect. Yes, Rebecca. And I like that you said that, because it's not just all about business. How do we still build that personal relationship during a, in a remote work setting? So again, we don't need to be best friends forever, right? We don't need to be BFFs with everyone we work with, but we need to have a level of understanding and appreciation for each person in our team and people outside of our team, people within our organization, and even our manager. So how do we create some informal space during our formal meetings to have some connection time, right? How are the kids? Are you going on any trips this summer? What are you up to for the holidays, right? To just have that getting to know each other space. Kristen says clear plans and activities with clear instructions, either via email or short phone call. Yes. A lot of things that used to be accomplished in bigger team meetings are now facilitated to more fragmented approaches. Exactly. And also people are zoomed out, right? So what are some other mechanisms that you have within your organization for quick instant messaging questions? Not everyone wants to get a phone call on their cell phone, and not everybody can call someone else on their cell phone. But where are those instant quick questions like, hey, did this go out? Hey, is this coming through, right? What systems also are you setting up? So as a manager, you might need to take an approach that is different from how you would if you were sitting next to someone in your team in the office. So based on feedback from various sectors that we work with at Humentum, we have put together, and by no means an exhaustive list, of skills and competencies that we think need to be prioritized in today's remote hybrid world. And we are going to spend some time exploring how we need to be contextualizing these competencies and skills to a remote work environment, and what habits we have, what habits we can start to form to make them stick. So most of you, like I said, have been working remote for years. Nothing's ever changed. For some of us, the pandemic changed and made us hybrid or 100% virtual. So this exercise is going to help us reflect on how it's going and what could be better, or what is working, right? So we're going to be using a Google document to work on. We're going to put you in groups of 3. So when you're put in a group, your group will be named something, digital 1, deliverables 1, and communications 1. It's going to go into 3 sectors, and I'm going to share my screen in a moment. Discuss in your group your key points. Don't get caught up in the technology. As long as one person can access the document and share their screen, and one person can take notes in the document, that's all you need. Okay. This tool that we're going to share right now was based on the Neuro Leadership Institute approach on behavior change, priorities, habits, and systems. Okay, so the team need to agree on what their priorities are to work on creating change, and then build the right habits and having systems that support the right habits and priorities. That's very important. So in your groups, review the competencies that I'm going to share with you, add what's missing, what would you do to change it, and what are some of the ways that these competencies will be taught, reinforced, or implemented in your new work environment. So I am going to share my screen really quick. If I can find my share screen button. There we go. Okay, so this is what this document looks like. Slides 2, 3, and 4 are some of the competencies that were identified by some of the Humentum members. For example, under digital proficiency, they were talking about virtual facilitation of meetings and presentations, right? Like a Zoom. Then there's proficiencies in digital tools. Some people actually didn't have online filing systems before the pandemic. So what resources do you need? What priorities do you need? And then meeting deliverables, building new relationships, setting clear expectations. So what this is supposed to look like is you're going to have a team. So at the bottom of the sheet, there's digital 1, digital 2, and then there's deliverables 1, deliverables 2, and then there's communications. So if you are in one of your groups, you're going to have, for example, virtual facilitation in meetings and presentations. So the competency is trying to read the room and is super hard in virtual meetings. So then how are we going to change this behavior? Creative ways to get team members engaged. Okay, so proficiency in digital tools. That's going to be the proficiency. So meet challenge of potential language barriers and developing skills. That's the competency or the issue that you're trying to address. And then how are you going to do this? Use tutorials to translate into useful guidance for all team members. Okay, so Miranda's going to put you into groups. We're going to have 12 minutes to work on this. And again, this is just what's working. So Miranda's going to tell us one name of each group, and then you're going to go to the bottom and see which group you're in, digital 1, deliverables, or communications. All right, I'm going to stop sharing real quick so I can see you all. And Miranda, you're going to work your magic.
Right, so the first group is Digi1, so that's Chloe's and Lisa's group. The second group's Deliverance, that's JP and Kirsten or Rebecca's group. And then the last one is Comms, Communications, that's Chris and Emily's group. I said only 3 groups.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions before we break into groups? All right.
The Google Sheet link is there in the chat.
Yes, Miranda put in the Google Sheet. So we're going to put you into groups for about 12 minutes, and then we'll come back and have a little debrief. All right. See you soon.
Okay. There you go.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. How was that exercise? I know there wasn't enough time. Sometimes time is short.
Yeah, that was gonna be our comment. It was really great. But more time, but the exercise was really great and something for us to continue, I guess, after this class to think more about.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a great tool. I like this workbook because, one, you can continue working on it even as an individual, but you could also share with your team and talk about it internally as a team and as an organization to help you better strengthen your systems. Was there anything else that jumped out at you that maybe something you hadn't thought about, or now to see it someone in writing, things that you still might need to address within your team or organization?
Well, for us, it was really a transition from COVID over the past 2 years to really looking at the habits that we have listed have really shown what the transition has been compared to working in the office 5 days a week versus when we were 100% remote and now we're hybrid. So we have really integrated certain habits that enhance our working relations remotely.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Julia. Yeah, it's about also being intentional, right? On the way we communicate, we manage our teams, we allow for us to build that relationship. And I do, encourage you all to keep thinking how remote management or what other systems or tools or procedures we can put in place to facilitate and help us with the managing and leading our teams. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts on this? You can always go back, see also what other teams put in. And again, take this, download it, and use it to continue to think of strategies for your team. But this link is going to be available to you even after the workshop. Anybody else have any thoughts on it? Please continue to use it. See how you can, like I said, bring it into your team, your organization, and have you think of things that still need to be addressed. Because the need continues to change, right? Every time there's a new project, there's a new person. A lot of people didn't think about onboarding new staff and hiring new staff while we were all 100% remote. How do you build that culture? How do you make them feel connected to the organization, to the team, have access to the resources? So definitely think about this. If you haven't hired anyone during this time and now you're going to start hiring someone, how do you do all these things in a remote or hybrid environment? Okay, same thing with mentoring. If you have those mentoring opportunities or have staff meetings, how do you also create staff meetings to have shareable moments within the organization? Okay, I used to, even when we were in person, I used to, after our official meetings, I would then create one on like a question. We will all just rotate to ask a question after each meeting. Something that someone wanted to know. It could be like, what's your favorite movie, your book, what are you doing for the holidays? Anything that just brings it down to a more personal level within the group or the team. Okay, very minor things can make a difference in creating that unity and being intentional about the connection, especially during these new type of work and environments. Okay. We don't have enough time to continue talking or go into talking about being inclusive and talking about understanding bias. So we're going to pick that up tomorrow. I don't want to cut it short. So I do want to have, we do have some updates for you. So again, we've really talked about a lot of things today and how it affects all areas of our work. So thinking about that, take a minute to answer the following question on the chat. What one thing I want to spend more time doing or think about when I go back to work? And Rebecca, I'll read your suggestion in a moment. But if you can take a moment, everyone, to answer that question of one thing I do that I want to spend more time doing or thinking about when I go back to work. And then while you all do that, Rebecca says, one idea, our team has started doing 30-minute time check-ins Monday mornings to connect, share how the weekend was and how each person is doing. Each person shares their priorities for the week. Oh, that's cool, Rebecca. That's really neat. Thank you for sharing. Regine says, trying to understand more of my strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. Yeah, the self-reflection time or that check-in with ourselves time is so important to our work and being the best person, staff member, team member, supervisor that we can be. Applying situational leadership. Awesome. Look more at the SWOT. I appreciate that 2x2 framework. Going to share that with my manager. Awesome. Great. Yeah, and if you don't know right now, keep it coming. It's again teaching us to have that moment of self-reflection and bringing it all in and see where we're at. Listening to my team, identifying where I need support and communicating this to my manager. Yes. Not just all about what our team needs, but what do we need from our team and from our manager or the organization. All right. As you're thinking those through, applying SWOT to moving the situational leadership. Yes. We do have a little homework for tomorrow. Okay. So this is to help you understand yourself and your supervisor. So this is on page 17 of the workbook. And this is for your personal reflection to prepare for tomorrow's session. It does not have to be handed in. Okay, so this is going to be on page 17. And it's called, please, it's understanding each other. Okay. This is for tomorrow, Wednesday. So complete it if you can before tomorrow's session. And then one thing we do want to do is we want to get your feedback. So I'm going to share my screen, and using the annotate tool, I want you to share with me how it's going. So using the happy sad face chart, again, view options, annotate text. Tell me how it's going. Okay, give us some feedback. What can we adjust? What's working in the happy face? What's not working in the happy face? So that way we have some times to make some adjustments if we need to. So I know sometimes time is short on the breakout groups, but feel free to put that in if that is the case, and we will see what we could do. Okay. Don't be shy. We don't shy away from feedback. Yeah, Chris, time is always super short. I know. We're trying to figure out. So you will do view, more options, and annotate and do text and just write down what's working, what's not. If you don't have any comments, we're good. Everything is good. You like how everything is going, then not a problem. We can, it's already 11:30. So we can just see you tomorrow. But if you do have some thoughts, we would appreciate so that I can make some adjustments if I need to. All right. As you put in your comments, you are free to go on about the rest of your day, and we will catch each other tomorrow. Okay. Oh, Chris, you were being deep. You were like saying time is short, period, for life. Yes, I wish I had more hours in the day as well. All right. Awesome.
Francesca, just a question. Yeah. So is there going to be a session tomorrow? Because I think I got the calendar invite integrated in my Google, and it shows that tomorrow is a break and there is a session on Thursday. Is it wrong?
The session is supposed to be all this week, Monday through Friday. And then next week is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. That's my understanding.
Yes, I think the calendar
Let me
invites are
see.
wrong. Then there's nothing on Tuesday either next week.
So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, so Wednesday's here, August 17th. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then next week is just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Because there's 8
Okay,
sessions. So all this
I'll
week.
check if the calendar invites I can get again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Marinda just shared the calendar with us. If for some reason you can't make it, we totally understand. Remember, everything is recorded. I know it's not the same, but you don't have to miss out. But you also, can attend to whatever you need to attend to. So we try to understand. Awesome. So if you shared your thoughts or your comments, or you don't have any, then I know I don't want to keep you on for longer than needed. We can definitely see you tomorrow. And we will take it from there. All right. Thank you all so much.
See you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.